15 minutes. And out of that 15 minutes, the hairdresser felt sorry to take money after 2 minutes. So he would do things around my head which had nothing to do with hair. And then one of my friends, colleague, then said, "Why are you wasting your money? Just shave it off, and then you'll save all this money." And then he did a calculation of the return on investment of that clipper, and he said, "In 6 months, you'll get your money back."
Standard MBA approach, right?
It helped. It helped me massively during COVID. So I used to run the whole company went online, and there's this Greek guy, and he had very curly hair, and gradually his face disappeared behind his hair because it kept growing and growing and growing. And I was the only one who was always clean shaved and absolutely nothing in the top.
So that's how we met. That's how Reynald and I met doing the
Debate society.
conversations around, and he has a very deep background in healthcare and innovation. I know Ari, both of us are quite passionate about innovation in general, and for me as well, and for you, the technology side and the data side are quite close to our hearts or our careers. So I thought, what better way than to just discuss in an unscripted and unplanned way about intersections that all three of us see in our thought process and in our career. So I thought, okay, let's have
Yeah.
Reynald as part of the show and request him to come on whenever he is able to, and he graciously agreed. So yeah, thanks,
Fantastic.
Reynald, for coming on and spending time with us. I really
And
appreciate it.
actually, and it'll be good to actually hear some other voice. We'll listen to each other all the time. When we speak,
Thanks.
we speak for 1.5 hours. So we'll learn something new from you in the coming days.
I mean, I've been learning a lot of things from you, also on the last two episodes, because it was very interesting to see and to hear about it and to progress also on the thoughts. I mean, it reminds me good time, by the way, on the untethered way of speaking, because basically it's when there's nothing planned, then the of communication is happening. And what I'm thinking about, on the nothing is planned. As a matter of fact, I mean, before joining this discussion, but well, okay, healthcare is good. I'm passionate about healthcare. I'm passionate about care. And by the way, the word passionate might not be the right one, but yeah. But I feel like it's amazing what all is healthcare, what all is all. I mean, it's all about that, and it pushed me to some limit in my thinking. And I was kind of okay, well, because Raga said, well, I mean, let's eliminate the discussion or discuss about. And I was like, okay, well, but I don't know anything about healthcare. I mean, I know like many of us, I believe that, well, when you feel healthy, when you feel well, okay, good, well, wonderful. And it's only when you don't feel well anymore that you feel like, oh, what's going on? What's wrong? And as Raya mentioned, I'm coming from a technology background, and it was a shift in my journey when I moved from technology to healthcare, and the shift started to be a little bit with LBS, but it became a reality when you guys did the LBS MBA. I was at John Hopkins at that time,
Okay.
and doing it. And short after Hopkins, I joined different programs, activity. And one of them is some work that I've done with WHO. And I'm still continuing following my fellows from WHO. And by the way, my mentor of when I was at WHO, and I still have amazing memories. And every single time I'm meeting this guy, Ramesh, it's a real pleasure. And recently, he posted something on LinkedIn, and it pushed me. I thought, okay, it's untethered, but I think it's a good point to start the discussion and the engagement somehow. And what I saw was just a statement from Ramesh, comment about some birds when they are sick, they are going into ants, and just so that the ants comes into their pillows. Just to heal them. And I thought like, wow, it's okay. Yeah, sure. It's not a surprise. As a matter of fact, when you feel sick, when you you don't feel well, there's a threshold at which point of time you are starting to look for some help to come to you. And I think said that, I mean, about that, so the healing process, which is a very natural one. Speaking about the digital side of it, because when I did the work with WHO and innovation, I was kind of, okay, well, on the technology side, well, what technology can bring in healthcare and what it's all about there. In reality, it sounds like it's very close, very, very close. The two of them are very close, as in my understanding about healthcare. We don't know what we are doing. We simply don't know. We have no clue. And I would even say, I know that a lot of people will strongly disagree and say, well, what's going on? But when a doctor is starting to practice, at the day he's leaving the school and he's starting to practice, it is known, it is said, we traditionally agree somehow that that person, he or she, has already 1 year of ignorance. Is practicing with 1 year of ignorance by this, you get, it's as if, we are living in London Business School and we are starting to do business. And the day we are practicing business, we have in 1 day, okay, we have 1 year of ignorance. Wow. Beautiful. Kind of interesting to see that this 1 day, 1 year, in this temporality and in
So that's a very deep point, right, Reynald? So I would ask, what percentage of it is attributable to the fact that the human being, like the body plus consciousness, whatever, is such a complex piece of equipment, right? And there's another thought that got triggered in me, that it's also due to the system itself of the creation of a doctor as a profession. It's both of these at play from my view, right? The fact that we don't know what we are doing is partly the system of allopathic medicine itself has many gaps. And also, it's just that the human body is just such a complex machine.
But to add to that, I think, Renan, you triggered something even I had. So when you were saying toward the end, remembered a few things. Some of it is personal experience, as in like my mother is quite elderly and she has got a very complex neurodegenerative disease nowadays, which got identified. Nobody knows. PSP, most of the people don't know. Even the doctors mention it as Parkinson plus. And you see that she's given a medicine, and the doctor was very honest few years back. She got diagnosed in 2016. And she's a statistical anomaly, unlucky. Statistically, she's unlucky because this generally happens in males. Now, she ended up having it. They do not know why it happens. They know what happens. So some of the cells in the brain dies, and it's a multi-system failure. But science has progressed enough to keep her alive. And here is the debate, right? And as much as I love my mother dearly and she wants to live forever, I think the older people get, the more they have the will to live. And Raghav and I had this discussion sometime back. But then you have to ask a question. You're elongating a life, but are you actually looking after the quality part of it? And there's a fantastic book. So I'm not going to give a big lecture. There's a fantastic book called When Breath Became Air. It's written by an American Indian origin doctor who died at the age of 32 or 33, I think, very young. He could not even finish his residence properly. He got diagnosed with cancer, and he was a high flyer. So his professors were consulting him when he was a student, and he became a neurosurgeon. He was training to be a neurosurgeon. Actually, he could not even finish the whole book. The last chapter is written by his then wife, who was a classmate of his. So the prologue, the prologue it's a fantastic book. It's not very thick. And here, the doctor looks back at how he became the doctor. Now he has become a patient. And some of his doctors were the best in, I think he was in Harvard Medical School or one of those, or maybe I think it was Harvard Medical School. So he had the best of the professors treating him. He was trained by the best in the best, so-called best school. And he recounts some of these things. And effectively, in summary, I think what it touches upon is sometimes the medical student forgets, even when they're dealing with a cadaver, that is someone's father, someone's son, someone's mother, someone something. And sometimes they will just rest there. He goes, literally, they'll be so tired. They'll just lean on the body and rest on the body, forgetting that it was a human being. And I think what he was trying to go to is this realization came once he was on the other side, that probably there's a human element that goes missing. So that is one point. So I think it's worth reading it because it's not a very pessimistic book, but it's a book that actually opens up in multiple ways. It depends on the perspective, how you read it. The second thing would be a BBC documentary. BBC does amazing documentaries. BBC documentary, the two brothers, both of them are doctors, they do various topics. And one of them was about chronic acute pain and how it is treated nowadays. It's medicine. And then the body gets used to it, so you increase the dosage. Then the body gets used to it, you increase the dosage. And what is not, and he says, so effectively it's like, it's actually not the doctor's fault always. A lot of patient comes and they want the medicine. If you tell them go and it will go away, they're very unhappy. And in UK, it's not the same because it's NHS, but in places like
Well,
India, for example, where
the wow
it's
is
competitive
there's
business.
so many things
So if I don't like this
behind
doctor, I'll
there.
go to another one. So the doctor who
And
gives me pills, when I
let
think I
me
should have a pill, I'm happy customer, right? I'll go back to
share a
him.
couple
And the
of
guy who
points
gives me a long
here, or a
lecture and
couple
he
of
says, you know
thoughts.
what, you
First,
should not be
Raga, as you
living your life
mentioned,
this way. You should cut out this and XYZ, do more walking, do all of those things. He may not get a return visit from
one
this guy,
thing,
right?
I mean,
So I think depending on the
when I did
situation, the
my
system sometimes
Hopkins
influences it. But
studies,
what he was
also
telling
was a
was,
couple of things
in the
because
old
clearly I
days, the
was,
doctors used to
and
visit
I
the
am not
patient at his
a
home.
doctor.
And that will give them a context of the
And
patient, because a patient's
are
body
you
is not
here?
without a context. So, for example, this black lady, she lives in a council house. Reynald, I think, lost connection. His connection was frozen. Let's wait for a bit. Let him come along. You can edit it out. You can't hear.
I'll pause the recording.
Yeah, yeah. So this doctor, the documentary was around chronic pain, and he picked different topics in different episodes. So this lady, very young mother, lives in a high rise which doesn't have a lift, and he decides to go and visit her. And one of the things he said was the traditional old doctor, even 30 years back, 25 years, 30 years back, they would always come and visit in their house. And he goes, for a doctor, it's a treasure trove of information. What kind of life they have, what kind of situation it is, because your actual prognosis may be slightly different depending on what you see. Even your remedy that you give might actually be different. So, for example, he goes and he realizes she doesn't have a lift in her building. Now, you realize how much pain she's going through to go up and down when she has these episodes of very acute pain. And so that was a point that actually the way medicine is practiced has become modern, but maybe it has lost that human touch. And I'm trying to connect that human part of it. We were trying to get a doctor to see my mother who's in Delhi, because the hospital doctor said, don't bring her here. COVID, etc. is going up and she's very elderly. Just get a local doctor to just check her physically, because a doctor with a stethoscope and few pushes and prods can get a lot of information. And that's what he did. Nobody will come to the house. It's a liability. Nowadays they have this insurance and all these claims and liabilities. No one is willing to come to your house. So anyway, going back to the point, ultimately this lady, nobody could give us. She was taking medicine. Her painkiller were increasing in dosage. What fixed was, he took her to a Chinese dance master who does Tai Chi and all this stuff. And then, I literally kid you not, the storyline in the document is 3 months later, he's going back to see, because she hasn't been in touch, which means it's okay. And he goes to this, and this doctor introduces her to this dance guy. And he goes to his studio, and in the studio door, there's this little window, right? Small. And he peers through. This woman is laughing, jumping around as if there is no tomorrow. What fixed her was that dance class. She was off her medication. Sorry, I hand you over, because that's what I remember, the two things.
And it's amazing. It's amazing. It's both amazing and it's both a reality, which is also. I, I simply found that beautiful, beautiful because it's life. And as a matter of fact, I mean, life is surprising, as Raga mentioned originally, in the sense that healthcare life is heterogeneous. So, in other words, I mean, even on an anthropological point of view, there's 7,800 languages on the planet, at least officially. which means that there's at least equivalent numbers of way of saying I'm feeling sick or not, I'm feeling well or not. And when I did Hopkins, back away to Hopkins, because I'm not a doctor, there's one thing that it was mandatory for me. I had to do some anthropology studies to exactly move from the technological way of thinking to the fully human way of seeing, feeling, and things. Kind of not shifting gears, but kind of funny because at the same time, every nation's, from what I'm seeing, every nation at the moment seems to approach healthcare and health in different ways. I was recently in India. I was in India in January timeframe. And I'm back. I'm back since February in France. In France at the moment, there's a lot of motto around something called disinformation about health and healthcare. In other words, it's based on a long story in France, as in if it's not, the proven medicine, so through clinical trials, I believe it's around that. I mean, I'm not quite sure because it's a trend at the moment. But if you say, well, I mean, if you share and spread the word that dancing can save your life, suddenly there would be
You cannot say as a doctor, probably.
yeah. I mean, there will be some agreement, disagreement. My parents nowadays are living in a so-called USLD, which is a long standing place. So it's an hospital, but when you are getting older,
Yeah.
and have some specific disease, and in this place they have some they put in place some palliative care, which, by the way, it's kind of funny to see and to use this word palliative care when it sounds like, I mean, yes, there's a curative care and a palliative care. So when it's curative, you don't care about the person, and when it's palliative, suddenly you focus about the comfort of the person. Okay, well, so it sounds like before you don't want the comfort of the person. It's only when they are gonna when they're gonna die. When I'm gonna
Yeah. Yeah.
you're gonna focus about myself.
I think it's they don't want to use the word terminal care, right? So it's palliative care because it's all about someone would have had a meeting and they say, you know what, let's make it nice. Let's call it palliative.
Part of it being nice, it's in the place where my parents are living, they are offering things like mediation with animals. So animals are allowed to be present in the hospital. I recently asked, by the way, I mean, are you thinking and planning to have a horse coming into the hospital? And of course, I heard, oh, no, 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 no. But by the way, there's some hospital in France and globally that make horses coming into the hospital. And that's it. I mean, it's just a rule. I mean, it's just a way of thinking and a way of seeing things. Because as back to the caring part and the health side of things, what are you bringing that ill right? I mean, there's a technology point of view. I mean, there's the surgical point of view. But what do you bring that heals back? I mean, that is correctly. There's even, I mean, and where we are lacking, I mean, we are still in a large progression journey is on the digital point of view, digital side. Nowadays, we are capable of making amazingly deep correlation and causations in place. Something that in the past it was very difficult to it was difficult to witness because it was taking us years and lives to witness this, and because someone had written it and someone was reading it, and yeah, it's true again. And so, counting and counting. Some of the most fascinating papers and analysis I've come across are the one about the drug usage based on the circadian light, I mean, rhythm mod. Okay. Is it true? Is it not true? And by the way, I mean, when I need to push the boundaries of thinking, there's one thing that I've been deeply questioning at some point of time, which is the statistical way of proving that something is working, which is the random, I mean, not the random clinical trial on its own, but the statistical method to say that something is good for you. Well, okay, it's mathematics, but it's only that. But speaking about the some analysis like the circadians effect, or even some of the kind of element which is rethinking of some disease in different ways. So the framing study, the one that has been used in cardiovascular for, I mean, it's a very longitudinal analysis in New York area for a very long period of time and with a large number of people. And thanks to that, we have amazing data sets around that. But through the data sets, then comes, I mean, you can question it. There's a database, so you can question it. And of course, you can have almost all kind of answers depending on what kind of a question you are asking, including those, for example, of having a possibility to say that, for example, obesity is a virus. What? Obesity is a virus? Well, if you look at obesity as a network, meaning when I mean, if you see the spread and the way that, then suddenly you say, well, as a matter of fact, I mean, it's kind of surprising. You have people,
because of the relationships and how it is spread across the population.
yeah,
It looks like it's interconnected.
And as you know, someone that is fit that join a group of people that are overweighted, and suddenly that person that was fit
Gradually, they become obese.
and vice versa, and say, okay, well, I mean, is it a virus? I mean, because it looks like a virus.
But here it is a virus in the wider sense of the word virus, not the virus, the pathogen, which actually inflicts. The environment becomes your virus at this point, right? That you end up in an environment where maybe psychologically or environmentally or defined in any socioeconomic condition where maybe in US, as far as I know, half the people, if you are economically on the weaker side of the city, there's no grocery store. You rely on ready-made, fast food and all this stuff. So if someone ends up in that situation, probably they will start reflecting what the other population already there is reflecting, would be my hypothesis. But do you think, well, in terms of all this data, right? We started with the word healthcare. Maybe I'm splitting hair here. All the advancement in science and AI being the buzzword in everything nowadays, AI being there, what it will predominantly, so here's the hypothesis, and I want to get your view on this. Is it going to improve the medical sciences part of it? So diagnosis, customized medicines, and all of those things. But not necessarily, but that is not a necessary, that's not, that condition itself is not necessarily going to drive a better healthcare. Because if I take healthcare as a wider version, medicine being in one set of intervention in certain cases, and I'm looking at, if I look at the age group, if I look at a human life, I'm looking at the most dependent part of your lives. Very early in your childhood, if you are sick, and at a very advanced age, if you are sick. In between, life kind of drives even. Okay, there are people who would be very dependent, but I think if we do a normal distribution, the population will be heavy on those two sides who need a lot more care under those conditions if they're unwell. Medical sciences would improve, but is it going to necessarily improve the healthcare part of it? What's your thoughts?
My straight answer is it will, because healthcare is the system. I mean, in English, the view healthcare is the system. In the French equivalent, we have santé, health, and we have care, the soin. And we have an health system. Healthcare in the terminology, I mean, in the Anglo-Saxon way, is a systemic approach to ensure we deliver and maintain the body and the mind in the right condition. It's interesting to see also that these confusions of, not confusion, but the different way we all approach something that is a concept. Health is a concept. And it's a concept to a point that, you feel healthy if you are alive. If you are dead, you don't know if you feel healthy or not. I mean, I'm not going to enter into this question and debate. But in order to agree, to agree all together, we have collectively developed models based on the ground one, which is the culture. And on a cultural point of view, a Japanese that is coming to France. Oh, well, I could share a very funny story. A Japanese that is coming to France, and Japanese tends to have very light meals. And in France, we tend to have a much heavier meal. And so your belly is going to feel slightly, it's going to feel different. And Japanese, it often happens that Japanese goes to the emergency rooms in France because they feel like, okay, what's going on? Meaning, I've never felt like that. I'm gonna die. Gonna die. And so there's a very strong cultural way of approaching health, approaching well-being, and approaching care also. Speaking about all these data sets, so all these data sets have been developed, from what I can see, from the point of view of normalizing health. So in other words, you mentioned about your life expectancy, because a lot of countries are trying to attract and saying, well, if you come to my place, you will live longer and healthier, or healthier and longer than anywhere else. It's the expected life in good shape at birth or later in your life.
What's the advertisement that if I move to that particular place, my life will be, I'll have a better quality of life, or if my next generation will have a better quality of life? Because I think the first one statistically doesn't make sense. At best it's a correlation, probably not even that.
To your point, Ari, it's exactly that. And that on the other side of the equation is somehow you are speaking, sharing it with facts, okay? But at the same time, we don't always think deep enough around that. So in other words, you feel like, oh yeah, well, tomorrow, if someone tells me, well, Reynald, would you go to one of these so-called blue zone, these places where people are living healthy and
some of the Mediterranean areas.
Okay. Oh, if someone buys me the ticket, well, I would go there. I feel like, it's kind of, it's a very good unique selling proposition. Come on, come here. You will have a drink by the evening, and you will have nice neighbors that are not crying or whatsoever, and blah blah blah. All the fairy tales that one could expect. At the same time, as you mentioned, Ari, in healthcare, we recognize, like in the US, you have a lot of Spanish, South American that are living in US. It's only at the second generation, and more likely at the third generation, that
they will have the effect of the local culture. Yeah.
So and all that, going to all the data set that we are so much ignorant, as in we are now coming down to the story of, at the cultural point of view, when a woman gives birth, this is at that very precise moment where the so-called belly brains start to merge, which is the largest network somehow in our body. Compared to our brain is wonderful, but our belly brain is wonderful. And so that's why it's so beautiful. Wow, first to bring so much data around it.
On a lighter note, I would definitely have a happier life if I go to Bordeaux, Saint-Emilion region. But I can guarantee I won't be living as healthy as a French person. You know why? Because I'll drink way too much wine. They will not, because they have grown up in that area. I learned my drinking in England, so I drink too much. Don't know moderation. A French person who has generationally been there, he is not going to drink like the way I will drink. He may have a taste a little bit, and that's the end of the story. Because I lived in Italy for 2 years, and I keep joking that Italy civilized me. That's where I learned how to. That's where I learned to drink wine. But their drinking is very different. I used to go out with an American colleague of mine, and will invite the other colleagues like, come on, because no, you two drink too much. You two go and empty as many bottles as you want. We'll go another time. So I think the generational view, but I'll be happier, no doubt about it. I'll be stress free, good quality wine, reasonably priced, all of it. So I'll be a happier man, but medically I may not be very well after some time.
Yep, especially that nowadays there's less and less doctors in France, and we are moving to a so-called desertification of healthcare in
Oh,
France.
really?
Yeah, it's a major.
This used to be the case in parts of UK. I moved to UK in 1999. And for the first 5, 6 years, I was not registered with any dentist. So every time I'll come to India, I'll get my dental checkup done. At that time, there was a serious shortage of dentists, and certain areas, there was hardly any. I think that the government's intervention actually worked out. I think the increased seats in the dental schools, etc. For the last 12, 15 years, I had a local dentist signed up. But a lot of the dentists were actually from mainland Europe. My dentist, so it was a combination of migration plus, I think, increased seats, etc. Took 7, 8 years to have an effect. And that will be, I think, a problem in a lot of European countries. With a declining population, you will have more healthcare needs, medical needs, whichever way you say, but a fewer number of doctors unless they allow migration, which is a political issue altogether.
Yep, and this is how we need to live. Oh, Raga.
Yeah, Raghav has disappeared. Let's wait for. No, he's having. You're back. You went. Your screen went blank for a second.
I just closed my camera
Oh, okay,
for a
okay,
second.
okay.
So how does it feel for you, Raga, from moving from Delhi to the Emiratis in terms of healthcare and in terms of wealth? I mean, do you have a lot of wine or beers, or I mean, just a side note, Harry, on the wine thing, it's funny to see that in France, they succeeded at one point of time to make a paper proving that 2 glasses of wine was good for health. That is an
I all I always knew that I'm waiting for a bottle. A bottle is good. That's the paper I'm waiting for. But I used to. So the reference is I used to go. So now I'm in India for the last 3 years. So I had two of my friends, 3 or 4 of us used to go to border region. We start with Saint Emilia, and we would hire a place through Airbnb or similar in a remote place close to places, and I had a fantastic time. It was great, good quality wine, no doubt. Actually, although you used to, so this was pre-Brexit, you used to get all the French wine, but actually, when you used to go to the supermarket, and we used to do this experiment. So UK, the worst wine is at the bottom, is below your eye level, right? Because they don't want you to buy it. So we used to go and buy it from the bottom rack, and then we used to sometimes ask the guys working, like, okay, if you were buying for your house, which wine would you take? And they a lot of the time they'll say that's really good, and we'll take it, and they were far better than the top shelf in Tesco or John Lewis, the Waitrose. So it was very interesting. I loved it.
That's
I
essential
I was not as much of a winer as my other two friends are. They know the side of the mountains and all that stuff. I just know how to drink and enjoy. But Margot is my particular favorite. I hated the leathery smell the first time I had it. And after that, I fell in love.
The wine shelf placement is more of a function of the merchandising and the deal that the retailers stuck the with the distributor than anything else. I don't think it has anything.
No. So effectively, what it happens is your Tesco will stock the things that Tesco wants you to buy at your eye level, and anything targeted at children is kept at the low level because that's the eye level for the kids. So they will badger
Yeah,
the parents to go buy those.
yeah. Consumerism, right? And design to buy. So I was
Which
reading this
which you
article.
are celebrating with the excuse of Eid, right? You are out shopping.
Yeah, consumerism. But I'm very conscious about these sorts of things. So I was reading an article a couple of days back around essentially how everything around us is designed to make us move away from this sort of centeredness or the being peaceful or being in a centered state, especially retail. especially retail experiences are centered around there is specific music that's now being played that makes you want to buy more, or uh, all of this specific sort of aromas or scents that are being pumped into the air in retail experiences where you want to spend more and so on and so forth. It's even in India, if you go to the healthcare space in hospitals, it's like there's TVs inside your room when
Cabin,
you're
yeah.
recovering. And it was a really weird because I went through 3 surgeries last year, and it was really, really weird to me why there would be a TV in there. I was like,
It's a very
I'm
simple answer, my friend. The amount of silly money they charge, they want to recreate your home so that do not miss a single soap that you used to watch. Probably the one. So Reynald, if you haven't watched Indian TV, great. Don't watch it ever, and pray that you don't have to see it in the next life. Two things happen: very political family dramas, right, which will give you stress. Number two, news channels, there'll be 32 little boxes with 32 people all shouting at each other at the same time. So it's like you watch Italian Rai 1 and then multiply by 32. They're all shouting at each other at the same time. Why would you
so
have it in a hospital where you want peace and calm?
yeah,
Because
I
they want
mean,
to recreate the home.
yeah, and they did a very bad job of recreating my home because in my house, I don't watch TV. I have a very peculiar approach to content consumption, which is like I tune my algorithm. It's been like that for 10 years. The day I went into advertising technology and I figured out how these platforms were built was the day I decided that I'll not let an algorithm run my life and it'll be the other way around. So I'm very conscious about the stuff that I even click on when I'm scrolling. And so for me, it was like, why is there a TV in my room? Yeah, and that's when I realized that okay, this is a retail experience. What they've
Yes.
built is even my interaction with the doctor was like I was really concerned that he was not telling me anything related to my lifestyle. I was actually asking him what can I do in order to, because I got diagnosed with a now a pretty standard condition, but maybe 5 6 years back there was no understanding of how it got developed. I have a condition called hidradenitis suppurativa, which is primarily caused by obesity and smoking. And I was asking him like, I don't smoke that much, or I don't smoke anymore, but I was asking him, are there any other markers, or what can I do to improve my condition? And not a single doctor, and I consulted with three of them. Not even a single guy told me to lose weight. All of them went for surgical intervention and asked me to use antibiotics, and my gut is currently gone as a result because I have to
No,
use
because
antibiotics.
I'll tell you, right? My observation, and so to give context to Renal, so I left for university. So 22 years I was in UK. I always had a strong connection. I'd come every holiday in India because family parents were here. But I had this advantage of actually being the inside guy who did not know the outside, then went outside and looking it from outside inside. And what I saw was, and it's changing very slowly. It'll change. It's very slow change. As a culture, doesn't so it used to be a poorer country. Parts of it is still poor, but overall, I'm talking at a macro level. It used to be much poorer. It used to be much more physical in nature. To do things in life was much more physical in nature. Now, increasingly, there are facilities and features in one's life which may reduce that physical activity significantly. Add to that sedentary lifestyle, a culture which doesn't have sports in it at all. In fact, parents will I don't know what parents nowadays do, but when I was growing up, parents would actually ask their kids, no, you don't go out for 3 months because you prepare for the exam because you have to do one of the two things, either an engineer or a doctor. Otherwise, there's nothing in life. So you have to cram your books and do everything. Parents are actively, so there's this sedentary or the culture did not encourage activity. So when I went, for example, to UK, I was amazed that actually people go out in the lunch and start running. People are getting this little opportunity to run around. I'm not even going to take you to international sports as a result. That's another day's topic. So you combine these things. I think India is in a I set a ticking time bomb. I think the time bomb is actually exploding. Nobody has noticed it yet. So highest number of undiagnosed diabetes as far as most studies say, which means I think in future there'll be a massive business of selling, crutches or wheels, because there'll be a lot of legs amputated at some point. And so, I mean, I make a very crass joke, but that is the way they're doing. And the TV. So I have a TV, but it's a smart TV. It's connected to my internet. So I watch YouTube and channels, because Indian channels give me a headache. So I didn't even take the connection. But even then, because I'm not paying YouTube, I have to withstand this advertisement. It's all food. It's all fast food. It's all sugary food, which is exactly what they had in UK when I went in 1999. And there's this whole campaign of and at least they had this regulation towards the end that you cannot advertise sugary food targeted at children before 9 o'clock, 9 p.m. By the way, in India, parents watch the same crappy soap opera with their grandkids who are 3 years old. So there is no watershed moment and all that stuff. I think the best investment you can make in India is pharmaceuticals, because the amount of ready-made order people are ordering, they all have various types of diseases, and hospitals. And hospital, I watch the business channels. Healthcare is a thriving, it's a good investment sector. And this is going to boom. So what happens? Someone like Raghav goes, who's an outlier, but majority are going, they want a quick fix. Doctor, give me the medicine so that I can become thin. Now they have it, Ozempic and all that stuff, right? Instead of actually doing the hard work for those who don't have a genetic problem. I think it's going to get worse. And
Yeah,
in a
and
way, I've heard a government official say it's a strategic issue for India. You cannot have a population which is, sleepwalking into such a scenario. It will limit India's strategic choices at some point. Sorry,
yeah,
my long
actually
lecture.
the culture of feeding is very much ingrained into people, right? So
Yes.
feeding people is seen as a very Hindu thing to do. On top of it, if you are adding the layer of being chubby or being fat is seen as a sign of
Well,
affluence.
yeah, yeah.
And
Because you see,
also
because
other,
it has an anthropological context. So the reason we all get diabetes prone is because historically, over millennia, this area used to have a lot of, what is the word of lack of food shortage? Food shortage, right? I forgot the word. Famine. There was a lot of famine. And the bodies evolved, our genes evolved to immediately convert it to fat, because it thinks that they will come again. So I have to store for energy when there's no food. But then you have pizza going down your throat. And the Italians eat one slice, the Indians take the whole round thing. Genuinely, it was revealing. I used to go with my Italian colleagues. They will literally order one slice. You can buy a slice. Now in India, you'll order it, one packet for each one of the family members, the whole big circle, and you'll eat it, right? So here is your gene. It acts in a particular genetic makeup acts in a particular way, and you are putting really dangerous weapons in a with a context of a lifestyle which is not even burning it properly.
I agree. Yeah.
Ari and Raga, one question from me is, how do you say healthcare in India, in Indian? Is it one word? Is it two words? I mean, is it?
It's many. No, Raghav, you go first. I am talking too much. Raghav, you go first, then I will go give the answer.
Healthcare. Health is, from a linguistic perspective, health is called arogya in Sanskrit, which is a breakdown or a evolution of the word roga. Roga is disease, and aroga is lack of
It
disease.
is.
And there is no concept, or if I trace back, I mean, my linguistics is very bad. I mean, it's really good compared to current Indians, but it's very bad compared to what I would like it to be. So if you look at healthcare, I mean, I was just talking about health so far, right? Health is
Absolutely.
arogya, is lack of disease, and there is no equivalent word for healthcare. It's just arogya again, which leads me to think that the people who coined the term, or the very, very early Indians, were pretty disease free, right? Like they probably rose with the sun and It's, by the way, it's a very circadian civilization. Very circadian. It's very standard for the average Indian farmer to wake up before the sun. It's even for the so-called the Brahmin, who is the priestly class. It was very normal for them to wake up before the sun and then go to sleep pretty much around the time the sun set. So it is a very circadian civilization that had plenty of carb consumption.
But that would
I
be
don't
that circadian cycle would be common in most areas of the world because you had no electricity, and for at certain time to have artificial light at home would be quite expensive, right, for various people. So I think the agricultural people, those involved in agriculture would always follow the cycle of the sun. Okay, if you're in the remote north of Norway, your sun comes up late. After 6 months, you don't see. That's a different story. But anyway, can continue.
agree. So healthcare, I cannot think of an equivalent term in classical language, but in current language, I would say it's each state have their own healthcare systems. The one in my state is called Arogya Sri, which is a government-funded healthcare system in which you get access to, if you're basically below a certain earning potential in a month, if you're below a certain salary level, you get a card that's given to you by the government that enables you to get treatment for free at government or private sector hospitals, which is widely touted to be one of the best healthcare systems in India, in my two states, which are pretty high in terms of the earning per capita income.
You're talking about
Because the,
Telangana and Andhra. Andhra is not that high, but Telangana, so where Hyderabad is, per capita wise is double the national average. It's one of the richest state now, and it has become rich in the recent years. It had a lot of land, relatively less population, but it has basically got all the international businesses coming. Generally educated population. It has become very rich. After you're finished, so have you covered all the points you wanted to make, Raghav?
yeah,
So here's my take. What Raghav said, absolutely correct. This Arogya and all this thing. I think a fundamental question would be, who are you asking in India? There are still poor who are really, really poor. They're not even thinking of healthcare. They're thinking of actually surviving today and tomorrow. Healthcare is a different story for them. But that population proportion has become smaller. So they have made a lot of improvement. In spite of what BBC and CNN says, that even the level of poverty that these people used to suffer now with government help, etc., it's a lot less painful probably compared to what it was 30 years back if you were at the same level in the economic situation. Saying that, they're still thinking of food. Probably after that, education for the children. Healthcare is quite one of the last things they will worry about. Although they actually suffer disproportionately when there's any health event in their life. Now, even the worst one is, and I know it because I read random stuff. So one of the Nobel Prize winners since a few years back is an Indian guy in MIT economics, the husband-wife duo. His research, one of the things he used to do randomized control trials. So a lot of it was on education side. But the other thing they observed was a lot of this one health event sometimes, so they will come out of that extreme poverty. So now they have a comfortable life in terms of they don't want to worry about food. They are actually focusing on the education and certain other things in life, nicer things in life. Still not buying cars and stuff, but they're not worrying about day-to-day survival. But the unfortunate thing that happens is any health event, generally with their children, the lack of facilities means, the lack of support structure means they fall down on the extreme poverty again. Because to take care of the child, either the mother or the father will not be going to work. And probably they're daily wage earners, right? They're laborers or something in a construction site. So one has to stay back. That income disappears, fall down into medicine is expensive. And especially some of the studies would be pre these schemes that Raghav was talking about. And if I remember correctly, it's both the federal government's responsibility, but also the state government. So he has disappeared.
yeah. Yeah, go on, please.
So they tend to fall back on extreme poverty. Now, this predates, a lot of the study predates the kind of support scheme that Raghav was talking about. Now, a lot of the states have this support schemes, but they'll be different in different states because it's not a federal government's responsibility. So in the constitution listed what is solely federal government, what is solely state government, and what can be done by both. Health falls on both. So there are certain things the federal government can do, but it cannot mandate that you have to have certain thing. It's a very federal structure like Germany or Spain. In fact, it's even more federal than Germany and Spain. Saying that, I don't know if Raghav you remember or I'm sure you are aware of it, you know everything. India right now, the federal government has started, which is world's biggest your US Medicare, Medicaid equivalent. So the current government in its previous term, it started. So effectively what you are now seeing is the germination of an NHS kind of a system. Now, so it depends on the state. The state has to agree. The federal government has said, here's the provision. Mr. State, you allow your citizens to do it. They can get a treatment up to this amount anywhere, irrespective of whoever it is. It doesn't care about income. It doesn't care about anything. Private hospital, public hospital. So those schemes are coming slowly, which will probably democratize the access to health. So I think the biggest issue in India is access to good quality health. You may give me a card, but if there's no decent hospital in 100-kilometer radius, I still have a challenge. And being such a vast country, which was still coming out of, it was relatively poor, still certain parts are poor. I think it'll take some time. Saying that, I lived through the NHS in a political debate that was happening in UK. I hope the Indian government is setting up a scheme which is not NHS, because NHS, in my view, is unviable. Because a bunch of people are paying through their nose, because I went to the doctor 3 times. And whatever he gave me, I keep joking, I got the most expensive medicine in the world because every salary slip has taken a lot of money out of it. Neither does it mean that I should not pay. But the model that NHS is running is unviable. I think the Indian health sector, there's certain thing it does. No, before the health sector, the society looks healthcare in a different way, I think, compared to the Anglo-Saxon model or even the French model, etc. It's the society still believes your family member is your responsibility. You have to take care of them. It may be changing in a certain way, but culturally, it is your family responsibility. So care part of it is taken by the family. So I'm in India to some extent because my mother needs a bit of help. Although I have my brothers and sisters, I need to give them support. So I keep going there every now and then. And I'm not the exception. This is happening everywhere. So I think a big chunk of the care is actually taken over by family at all levels. So that would be universal, irrespective of your income level, your economic situation. They're all doing it within their means. So what has been institutionalized, say, a social care sector in UK, in India, they will never have a social care sector because it's called family. As of now, unless Indian social society changes dramatically. Early life is also the same. So what will happen is a kid is born, to the 2 aunties and 3 uncles turns up at your home and give support. And then they stay there for 2 months. Whereas one of my cousin was in Germany when his kid they had twins. Next day, a woman knocks. So my cousin was born and brought up in UK. So the next day, the knock on the door was that when they came back home, the government has sent someone to help them because they have twins. I think it's super, as efficient as a German can be. But I also think it's not sustainable for a population of India size, because you have to be super duper rich to send 1 person per family just because they had a twin. So I think the scale of India is such, some of these models have to be, the concept can be taken, but the execution and implementation has to be different, because otherwise it won't be economically sustainable. But saying that, I think for the foreseeable future, you're still looking at care being a primary caregivers being the families, doctors being the specialist interventionists. Even in hospitals in India, they will allow a family member to stay and take care of. So for example, as long as you don't have any serious disease and you're not in ICU. So if you have a general thing, so for example, my mother used to go because the sodium has dropped. They would have a visitor's sofa where you can lie down. I would stay there. The nurse is not hanging out all the time. The nurse will say, any issues, you call me. They will just turn up to give the medicine or the drip or change the drip, whatever it is. So I think that hybrid model will continue, and I think it's more sustainable. The other thing I've seen, and this I'm talking about a private hospital here. In NHS in UK, every operation stops at 5 p.m. or 5:30 p.m. or 6 p.m. unless it's a emergency surgery, etc. When I used to stay with my mother, so this is Medanta, it's one of the biggest hospital in modern hospital in UK. India, it's a private hospital in Delhi. I could not sleep, so I used to walk around and see, because my mother didn't need me all the time. She's just at low sodium. I would walk around. The whole hospital is absolutely active. So all of a sudden, they'll come into the room, they'll drag my mother with a wheel bed. And I'm like, where are you going? Oh, we'll do her test. So she's sleeping. She's getting her MRI, not MRI, but whatever they can do with the bed rolling in. The whole night, they're really sweating out the assets. So those assets during the daytime predominantly is used by outpatients and any urgent stuff for inpatient. But for the regular things where someone has to do a test, but it can wait, they're rolling them at 2 in the morning. The patient is fast asleep, but everything else is being done. So they're getting their x-rays done, they're getting this done. And what I saw was a model where they're really taking the last drop of sweat out of that asset. Whereas in UK, 6 p.m., someone has locked the door, exclamation is out of bound. Even if you need it, you come back tomorrow morning, or or you go to the emergency.
But it's
Let me uh, let me quickly share a picture that I actually got on one of my WhatsApp groups this morning on the asset sweating piece. Ari, I just wanted to make a couple of points. One on the asset sweating. Medanta specifically is one of the world's biggest. I mean, India is one of the world's biggest medical tourism hubs, and Medanta is
And
a
it has got a massive. They have a whole separate section and administrative stuff for the foreign patients.
yes, yes. And so, and just to share some
And
data on that.
this is a hospital, because it has got such a huge number and it gets these foreign patients and everyone who are priced slightly higher. They don't have the tendency like other smaller hospitals in India to do unnecessary tests. So to give an example, my sister had a bump in, I think she fell down or something, and she booked an appointment with the neurosurgeon, and the neurosurgeon pretty much laughed her off and said, "Why have you come to me? You go to neuromedicine, and actually, before you go to neuromedicine, you go to general medicine. You don't need any specialist right now. Especially, they'll find a fault anyway the moment they start looking at it." And the number of times they have told when we took our mother with us, and they said, "No, for her, the best place is home. We'll give her the medicine. If you need, we will bring her back. But the best place for her is to be surrounded by her family. Take her home." And actually, sometimes we thought it's, 'cause my mother used to get a lot more confidence when she was in the hospital. A couple of times I asked her, "Are you happy that you're going home?" Because no. I'm like, "You want to stay in the hospital?" Because yes, because she knows if something happens, they have the infrastructure. Whereas at home, it's not as good. But they will always send back. So
Yeah,
over to
yeah,
you.
they're thoughtful in that sense. And I mean, just to make a point around the medical tourism piece, look at the. I mean, I'm sure this is anecdotal. I just got this as a WhatsApp forward, but if you look at the price difference of some of these, right? If you look at bypass surgery, the US costs $144,000. I'm sure this is without insurance, but India costs 5,200 US dollars. The cost of delivering is just so much lower. Each and every one of these, like hip replacement, is just like a fraction of the cost that it costs. And part of it, I think, is attributable to, of course, the bottom layer of healthcare talent being so widely available, like nurses and stuff.
No. So I think you have to normalize it by the difference in pricing, right? So if you look at the minimum wage today, the hourly wage rate in India, assuming they're paying that, and the US, there'll be a massive difference that will come, right? And then, so 144,000 is not clearly because they're charging you too much. It's because his base cost is high, right? That he cannot get a cleaner in the hospital for $10 an hour. You can get it for 100 rupees, right? Which is what? $1. So 1 to 10 difference almost there. Numbers may not be correct. The second thing is actually the asset sweating part, right? You have to distribute your fixed cost. Now, if you're making it operate throughout the night, you have got a lot within the same given 24 hours. You have got a lot more going through this process system. But I think the interesting fact is, God knows, a long time back I read it. This was the NHS during Tony Blair's time in UK was a big discussion issue every day, and I used to be fascinated by it. There was a stat. So they were trying to then copy everybody else, right? Shall we copy France? Shall we copy Germany? Shall we go to India and see? And then they discovered in India, some of these heart surgeons have done 10,000 surgeries. Now their health and safety, the doctor's health and safety condition doesn't even allow him to do 10,000. But as a patient, I would rather go to the guy who's done 10,000. His practice, he has got the best practice in the world in real stuff, right? So I
Yeah, that's
think,
actually the other very interesting point that you brought up, which is sort of what do you call donation or philanthropy through medicine, right? In India is a very, very real thing that I haven't seen
yeah, so you look
elsewhere.
at you look at Vellore, if you look at Vellore and others, right? So the whole of India is flocking, probably some other countries. These doctors are also getting the best experience in terms of diversity of cases, just clear practice of doing a cornea replacement. They get 50,000. Some of the doctors will not even get 50 in a year, probably in certain others. So I think not that it is drives the cost different. I think the key power is some of these doctors are really, really well practiced in their trade.
I mean, not just well practiced, they are also research doctors in the sense that they are operating at the fringes of,
Uh-huh.
like, I know my wife's classmate in her MBA, her dad is one of the best oncologists in India, and he's dedicated his entire life to now. He runs the Shankara Cancer Hospital and the Shankara Foundation, which is a
This is the eye hospital, Shankara.
exactly. The Shankara Netralaya is the eye hospital piece, but they also have Cancer Foundation, Oncology Foundation that operates on the fringes or the edges of oncology research, and they just do so much medical philanthropy. It's the same with the Narayana Hrudayalaya guy who you mentioned, like
Uh-huh.
10,000 surgeries, right? And I know people who do the same for cleft lip. I know people who do that for polio, for the other the leg the
Yeah,
club
but
foot.
for every doctor such that's so philanthropic, there's another doctor who's shaking down the patient to get more money out.
I know,
Unfortunately,
but
that's the reality.
I agree, but there is the opportunity to do it, which
Yes.
is what I'm talking about. I don't
Yeah.
think you could find an equivalent in the UK system or the US system or the
No, yeah,
French
you
system.
get UK doctors from Imperial sitting in the Gaza in a hospital which has got nothing left, still operating, right? So you get those things. I wouldn't say philanthropy is a very particularly Indian trait. Probably I would be a bit more critical and say probably we're a bit less philanthropic, to be honest. But the diversity of the cases, absolutely, because of the huge population, you get all nuances and all sorts of issues.
But it's, yeah, I mean, to your
Yeah,
point, Nari, and
that's one piece I wanted to bring up.
one
Yeah,
thing that,
yeah, go on, Ren.
that, I mean, all of that makes me think about, on a financial point of view, meaning kind of the net present value and the practice level. I've not gone into the calculation because just for the foot now, as in. But what about a business model? What about a model where basically our caring practice goes to a level that basically by caring more and saying caring, and in the French way, by the way, we are making a nuance between taking care and giving care, and it's a fundamental. I mean, in the philosophical way, speaking way of taking care and giving care, it's enormous. But anyhow, reaching a level of practice in caring and caring well, therefore, in the value chain, what would be the most cost effective approach? Meaning, would it be good to enable people? I mean, let's be crazy on my side to create a business model where basically, well, instead of paying a doctor 10,000 K a month, well, let's pay someone that is caring.
Subscription.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, you are moving from caring to prevention to some extent. So in the value chain, you are going to less extreme case somehow. Where I'm heading that is, of course, it's in the context of end of life for my parents, and we are getting older.
Mhm.
Yet, what I've noticed is my father has the Charcot disease, and it demands. I mean, it's a disease that is very unknown. It's a rare disease. It's less rare and all this element. But at the same time, what I've noticed and witnessed is two things. First, while we don't know a lot of things about the disease, yet we know things. There's some element that we are confident about it. At the same time, at the caring level, the practice is not spread. So in other words, we are putting my parents, my father, but like many other people in living context, to some critical situation. Speaking about, food, my father was even somehow guided, but he said no, guided to have a surgery, so to have food directly to the belly.
That's what my mother did because of her disease. So the doctors, they did it for different reasons. They said that in heart disease, the most of the time the death is out of choking or getting pneumonia because food goes into the lungs because the coordination. So they put the right strip. So they gave an option. Do you want to put make a hole in the thing? And my mother was at that point still functioning. Actually, when I think back, I am amazed how she took it because I told her that, you see, these are the two options. This is small operation, this one. She goes, you decide what is best. I think without operation is better. And I genuinely think she's alive still because of that, because her coordination that's the whole point of her disease. The coordination goes away. So the windpipe and the foot pipe won't coordinate well. Sorry, because you mentioned that.
But at the same time, back to the model in India, in various models that I've seen, yeah, I mean, moving two things that I've seen that I would love to see more is a greater practice, meaning the 10,000 hours of practice for caring, but not caring in a general manner, meaning you don't have a neurosurgeon that is doing cancer. I mean, it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
So when you are caring, I mean, how can we agree that caring can be the same between caring with someone that has cancer than someone that has a disease or something like that? It doesn't make sense. And the second thing that is that struck my mind is nowadays, I mean, there's a shift in many part of the world, which is on the ecological transformation of the buildings. And why can't we what can't we move towards the building, the house that is taking care of taking care?
More friendly for those situations and needs.
And so
Absolutely.
So the human side of it is indeed the human side of it. We are caring. I mean, the light is, I mean, speaking about the circadian light, is part of the healing. And I am part also of healing, meaning the interaction with the other people. And so ultimately moving to a system or to a place where we continue to evolve as human beings, but at the same time, we are evolving, also taking usage of the latest and greatest of what can be, rather than continuing on the journey where we were.
I wanted to share a thought, and I have thought about it because of personal experience and circumstances that I going through. I think care, taking care, giving care, as you said, that part of it, so I think who gives it it's a secondary point. I think the first point is a philosophical approach to it. I think most human beings, and I know different cultures have different views to death, but even now, I think even though the Eastern culture and Western culture, no, I don't know of every Chinese culture that well, or Vietnamese, Indian, I know. We are supposed to be much more comfortable with death. But the reality, in my view, is death as a concept, when it is not personal, is okay. When it is close to home, a lot of people are unwilling or don't feel comfortable about accepting the reality. The reason is, and I think I'm going to your point about should we pay more for those who doing care and give them more practice. I think one of the fundamental issue, for example, is to be able to. So if I'm a family member, and if I have to give care to a family member, and they're towards the end of their life, forget the disease part of it, they're end of their life because they are very elderly. If I accept, and I have to really accept from the core, that life is finite, death is inevitable. And we do not know when, but it is much more closer than it was 25 years back. In that case, my approach would be different. So, for example, with my mother, what I do is my brothers and sisters, they will be focusing about, has the medicine gone on time? And I would say, who cares? This medicine is not going to make her run again. She has been taking this damn medicine for the last 5 years. Doctors told us it is not going to do anything other than give her an artificial boost in happiness for a few hours, and then 6 hours later, and she takes hardly very few medicines. But for me, and maybe it's a personal psychological bent as well, my focus is on the human being that is there. Her brain is functioning. She has lost her speech, but her brain is more functional probably than mine. I need to take care of that part of it. So I will read her newspapers, whether she likes it or not. Sometimes probably she gets bored. I will talk to her as if she's talking back. I will sometimes make this artificial conversation as if she has responded. She may think I've gone mad sometimes, probably she laughs. But what I'm doing is, I'm not ignoring the fact that she has this PSP, which even doctors knowing can do absolutely nothing. So the reason I'm saying is, why do I read her newspapers every evening over the telephone, even when I'm away? Because I'm trying to take care of the human mother rather than the person with a disease. Because the person but I think a lot of people find it easier because I think they all say the Western culture prefers to be in control. I think every individual prefers to be in control. And through medicine and this and that, you feel like you are in control. So that's roughly my view. I think that has to be clear in order to get the care part done properly.
Your point.
And,
Go.
and the last part I would say is, in terms of care, there's another set of people who needs help. Those who are taking care of those who need care, there should be facilities where they need a break and respite. So I know in UK, for example, so teenagers who look after their only parent, etc., they get these respite breaks, something like that, because that actually is an immense pressure and takes an immense amount of toll on people around, so in certain diseases especially. And it's not cancer. It's my mother kind of desire. When we first got diagnosed, I did my research on internet, and what I saw was all across US and everywhere, people were just like exhausted because their world just changed upside down. Sorry. So that was my 2 cents worth.
It goes even more profound from health and care, I would say. But just one element, I really have mixed opinion of view on our sensibility to health, to death. One of the anthropological work I've done was, I'm not an anthropologist, but I was part of a team, and I was amazed and shocked because one of the topic was the palliative care, and so the work that was conducted was not in a random clinical way, but about in general. So how do you feel about death and the palliative approach and these kind of things? And then we started to split between, in the last month before. So depends how it works, but in some cases you turn to have to go to emergency or artificial respiratory. And by the way, when I was at Hopkins, I met the at that time it was the chief emergency at Hopkins, and I was saying, wow, that's amazing, because in the room it's more like it's a crazy place. Noises from the GE machine, the Philips, and they are all making sounds that are all different, and everyone needs to recognize that these bells mean that someone is going to die there, and blah 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 blah. Anyhow, but on a person point of view, having something in your throat, must be tough. And funny enough, it's a shocking moment for one person to have all these things. Many of the people who went through this experience, why they felt that it was awful, painful, difficult, most of them were now thinking that if something difficult happen again for them, they want to go through that again. So and it's kind of fun. It was on an anthropological point of view very weird to realize that between something that is unknown, meaning death, and something that is known, the pain.
Pain is acceptable, always more acceptable.
Yeah. Pain is more.
So I saw my father pass away, and he was so anyway. I don't need to go to the story. It's nothing too dramatic. But only thing is, my father one day, so 6 months before he was in hospital, and one day all of a sudden there's a drama. He's being pushed to ICU, and he just made a very profound statement. It stuck with me, and I saw it with my grandmother, I saw it with my father, and I'm seeing it with my mother. My father said, you know, when you all used to joke about death, and this literally after he comes out of ICU, like a few hours later, he still got stabilized. When the time comes, you don't feel like going. And I think that's the reality. I see my mother extremely, she still is afraid of death. And this is one of my bigger fear. I think nobody should die with fear in their heart. So I keep telling my mother, when the end comes, you close your eyes, nobody exists. Because I think what she's afraid of is not death. She's afraid of missing the relations, right? The son, the daughter, this and that. And I'm always trying to tell her whenever I speak to her on these things, I'm like, once it ends, it ends. Nobody exists. That's what it is. Because for me, that will give her some closure that she should not worry about missing someone. Because I genuinely think maybe it's not the willingness to leave, but the fear of missing the people you know.
And that brings me to a completely outside of healthcare statement, which is it's a more of a spiritual statement, which is what are we doing here on what is not the purpose, but our so-called spark of life. The spark of life term knows, but the spark of life knows exactly where it is supposed to go back.
Yeah.
And there's
So I think different cultures look at it differently through their cultural norms, religious, spiritual, all those things. But when I only once went to a crematorium, that was during my father's time, and I'm the younger son, so all the rituals are done by the elder son, so brother. My brother reminded me that you have never been to a crematorium, so if you're feeling awkward, don't need to be there. But one thing that fascinated me was this spiritual, religious writings, really, not spiritual, religious writings. At that particular moment, when you read it, they're quite soothing. And I kind of did these rituals, but I also knew I analyzed too much probably. That these rituals, I always used to laugh at these rituals from outside, any religious stuff. It's like, okay, that's for someone to make money out of a situation. I would have said the same thing before. Having gone through it, in my analysis, I concluded this is really a set of drama that someone has created over time to make the fact that that physical person is not going to be there slowly get into your conscience while the body is still there. So all these religious Hindu rituals to me was really not as much for the person who's dead, but for the person who are still around, who are doing these rituals, because it is for them to slowly saying goodbye in a way that ultimately soon you will burn the body. Now, in our case, it's a little bit more brutal, right? Although there's electric things and all these things. Whatever it is, be it so I'm sure the equivalent exists in others, or I don't know. So what the previous me who would not have gone through this thing would have said, there's a bunch of drama. There's no point to it. I think that particular vulnerable moment, it plays an important role. The rituals kind of marks this transition in your life and it prepares you slowly that it's a significant difference that is going to happen soon.
And it's in traditional way of approaching healthcare nowadays. I'm saying nowadays because and it took me a long time to start to connect, and I'm still far away from connecting all things. But nowadays, we often compare healthcare, compare and contrast. First, on the ground of cultural, so the ground based, environmental, And recently I was kind of, well, okay, but in all that scheme, where the social side of it, where do you put it? And the social side of it is how do we, for me is how do I integrate either that I am finite or I am infinite, meaning both are possible, both is also reality. And on a scientific level, I am finite and infinite at the same time, as in there's no question for me, there's no question as, the gaps in my atoms are like the gaps in every single atoms on the planet. So if there's a gap outside there should have gaps here. Same here, there's something in the gaps that is whatever it is. And and the social part of it is somehow an acceptance of my ignorance around that. Ignorance of what it is, I have no clue. Or let's say I cannot name what I don't know or I don't see somehow. And back to the story of health, I think that what's meaning it's a story. Health is a story. It's really a story. It's a narrative. It's about how we interconnect each other and how we do care about each other. How do we have made our connection moving from in the last 100 years from 1 billion people to 8 billion people on planet Earth. And yet, yeah, there's still a lot of mystery around that, which at the same time is a wonderful opportunity for making business. I'm saying that.
Absolutely. Actually, it's on the point of business. So I misunderstood something you said there, and the thought that came to my mind was, it's the care, for example, right? So we talked about all this care and philosophical and socio and all those things. But at the end of the day, it's a day-to-day practical issue for many people. Because when you have to do the real black and white stuff, it's not about philosophical thought process. I have articulated everything. I haven't gone through something and thought about it. But actually, at the point of doing, there is just the doing. And that is where you need resources. You need trained resources or skill resources, or you need time and all of those things. Generally, if you see the model, the social care model, whether it is with the healthcare context or whether it is just social care is a separate context, to some extent in the UK, these are subsidized government services effectively. And the question is it sustainable in the longer term? And because it doesn't matter whether we are talking about Europe or India, because it's a question of time. At some point in time, even where it is sustainable now may become unsustainable. What is the model? I think one is the prevention side, that you do as much as you can to incentivize, gamify things to encourage that right behavior. So I was thinking at that point, jokingly in my head, some of these cars can have these boxes based on the driving. It can monitors the driving thing, and then your insurance premium will go down or up. So every human being can be fitted in the box. It's a very dystopian world. The driving, but something that incentivizes, and it should be a choice. Some people may decide not to do it, and fine. And rather than blaming someone that you should not smoke and this and that, I think let people do whatever they want, but they should be able to quantify the cost of the fun. So I'm having a beer while drinking. I should know the cost of the fun. Maybe I'll have to pay because I'm doing a slightly risky behavior. Maybe I have to incur the cost in some shape or form. And it goes into allocation, gets allocated. So one is the prevention part, right? Prevention not through lecture. Prevention through incentivizing, gamification, whatever it is you say. That's one part, but that will not eradicate a huge amount of stuff. That will only do the behavioral stuff. Genetic stuff, you cannot incentivize genes to do something. So you do gene editing once you have got diagnosed to get the right medicine, etc. But in between those, on the care side, I think there can be it's worth looking at the care model where you almost make it like Finland, right? If the way Finland improved its teaching overnight, that increased their salary, I think 4 or 5 times, and they said you have to be a top university graduate to even be enrolled in a teaching course to become a teacher. And you make it so prime that the best brains come. And when the best brains come, they'll also bring the best ideas. Now, a big chunk of healthcare is actually can never be automated, right? Human functions are human functions. You will have to do it in a way, but you may find slightly better way of dealing with those things. I think theoretically what I said makes sense. Practically, is it ever going to happen? Which politician wants to talk about death to get vote? No one. It's a policy decision at the end of the day.
But I mean, yeah, go for it, Ari.
So I think maybe the politician doesn't do it, but a business model comes and tries to do something there. I don't know what that answer is, but somewhere there, and that's how we shift the goalpost a little bit. But see, however much they talk about humanoid robots, sorry, it's not going to work. Some people will die in a heart attack seeing that humanoid robot trying to do something to them. So it has to be human beings at the end of the day to give good humane care. Am I frozen or is no? I think Reynald is frozen a little bit. His screen is frozen.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's frozen.
The consultants. Wow. Good point.
No, consultant as in the McKinseys and the Accentures and the Deloittes of the world, not the audit part, but it's on the back of AI. So I left my job almost a year back, and our plan was to go back to UK probably. But in between, I realized that something that has happened a lot, and I didn't put a lot of time, is understanding the AI space. So I did my research, put some time in it, and I used to be a consultant before. At one point, I had various avatars in my life. 80% of what used up our time, that can be done in 2 minutes nowadays. You can unburden the businesses from paying this fat fees for this pointless PowerPoints. Even if they want a PowerPoint, it can be done in 2 minutes. Because a lot of, I would say, majority of the consulting businesses, the bulk that is there, and I'm not saying bulk by name, I'm bulk by work, right? McKinsey also does probably stupid stuff. They're repetitive in nature. They're not innovative. They position it as innovative, but probably they've taken it from another client they've done, tweaked here and there. And by the time it gets implemented, it's exactly the same as another guy has done. And it will not work because the context is different, or sometime it'll work. It's a bit of, but a good quality consulting would be understanding the problem, researching the various options and solutions, because you're not inventing anything. You're just innovating in the sense taking ideas, permutation, combination, and getting to the outcome. A lot of time the time that used to get taken out of this research or finding out what are the various options and possibilities, what has happened in the past when they done this. Those can be squeezed into a very small time frame nowadays because of the Gen AI. AI was always there. I'm talking about Gen AI. Secondly, data manipulation. That can be done so much easier in some of this. And these are early stage Gen AI. I'm not an AI fan in the sense that nowadays it's a latest buzzword bingo, right? So world poverty, someone will say Gen AI will solve it. It won't. So I think not for everything, but for a bulk of the work that this consultant generally did, they can be done in-house if someone has the time, or it can be done at a much squeezed time and a much easier way at a much lower cost. That's why I was telling about destroying the consulting market, because I think they cannot justify their fees for too long.
I would just comment on that area. I would say yes, up till the limit of what is digitalized nowadays. And there's still so many things that are not in the digital domain that are, I was in India in January. I found some books that exist in papers. Some of them are, by the way, very interesting because they exist on papers and are also available on so-called archive electronic form. There's two things. There's what is written and what is experienced. And if you read a book, sometime by reading a book, it's 10,000 hours of practice. Sometime by reading a book, you are good enough and you have a strong practice enough to need only 1 hour of practice to somehow reach what the book is explaining.
I completely agree. I'm not one to espouse AI will do everything. Not at all. Actually, it has got a very limited scope. So, for example, anything which it can only work well in terms of generative part of it. It exists in a digital form. It doesn't have human emotion involved in any way. There's no need for gut instinct or such things which cannot be codified, which means huge amount of human interaction will never be able to be done. So sales guys will still be there because it's a relationship business. No computer can codify how to do a good relationship, right? But what I was talking about was, for example, propose researching an idea. A consultant does, and if he goes to the library, good luck to that consultant. He will get sacked from his job probably because it'll take too much time. But those kind of work where what I'm saying is this was much harder for someone to access in an individual company, but for a McKinsey it was easier because they had exposure to the wider world, or a Accenture to have a wider portfolio of their own work. Now some of this work actually is almost immediately available to you also, because the way they have stolen all the data and trained these AI models. That is exactly what I'm talking about. Beyond that, I think particularly the hype will go. I started my career when just before the dot-com boom went bust. So I've seen this hype. I think the areas where companies can justify investment on their own AI models, etc., pharmaceuticals, pharmaceutical/medical side of things, where there's a huge data point. The faster you churn, you may actually be able to see trends. Otherwise, it will take a lot of time. Diagnosis side of things, where human biases may disappear to some extent. Imagery analysis and all those things. Financial services. Agriculture. If agriculture, definitely. Probably for my most recent job was in the construction sector. Most probably construction, etc. But probably those guys won't do it because it's such a low margin business. They don't have the money to invest, so they will carry on their own way. So these are some of the areas I think where you will have companies can justify investing money to have their own model. For the 99.9% of others, what they will do is they'll utilize AI to do day-to-day things to do faster. So to write a letter, I won't start from zero, I'll say, and I've done it. I had to write a letter to a vendor for rejection. I said, who is going to sit down and write it? I went to Copilot and it says, give me a draft of a vendor rejection letter. It gave it. I put in the names and I sent it off. Nobody got harmed. I saved my time. The guy got his letter much faster than he would have otherwise. Those kind of things would be the 99.9% of the use cases. Human emotion, the moment it comes, no AI can do anything.
But not only human emotions, but also on the connection with health and healthcare. There's, share a utopia and a dystopia. And I'm going to share two stories, but no, I'm not going to say which one is utopian or dystopian. So once upon a time, I'm coming and I'm alive. I don't know who am I, meaning maybe I'm a king, or I'm a miserable, or I'm a queen, or whatever. I am. That's all. And based on where I got birth, my cultural environment, my genetics. Okay. My genetics nowadays will tell me if I'm gonna die at 60, at 70, 80, depending on the environments. It's called precision medicine. If I am the queen of UK, there's a balance between a couple of things, as in the knowledge around that, but the duplication of my genetics. So in other words, tomorrow someone is creating a clone of the queen gene. Where do you put that into the equation? So where I'm going is into the AI, as in AI, depending on if you are building a private data set, the private knowledge versus a complete open knowledge, where politics, ethics, and philosophy are all coming together. Then you are confronted with some issue, as in, okay, well, when you are cloning someone, who is that someone becoming into the hierarchy of a queen or a king? If you are cloning someone, who are you making into the story of life and death, as in suddenly money flows about disease focus? Nowadays, I mean, rare disease when you have a rare disease, it's tough to be funded. But when you have a rare disease and you have a queen, likelihood there's going to be a little bit more money around that. And same for many other domains. Whenever AI is touching life to some extent, it's my belief we are entering a gray zone of decision making, as in we are ignorant, but in our ignorance, it's a human being ignorance only. And at the same time, if we are moving that in ignorance with data sets, it's beautiful. Suddenly, privilege are into not the privilege and in a hierarchical point of view, but uncertainty of life is something that is then put again into question, according to me. So, I mean, to what I say, I'm sharing that in the context of and speaking about progressions. Two things. First, wonderfully enough, at the moment in genetics, in cancer research, there's wonderful data sets that exist in France and in UK and in many places on the planet. Yet, I'm not so certain that there's collaboration on one end, but on the other side of the equation, it's like, well, it's my data set. Don't touch my data set.
And I think that will increase even more because this data becomes the competitive edge, right? So imagine, right, if I was the Queen of India, I would say, why would I share 1.4 billion diverse data set? Because effectively, I can harvest it and create medicine for all sorts of particular cases because all those cases that exist here, right? All cultural nuances and everything. So that will increase, and it's already increasing. That will increase even more. I think I am a little bit less over dramatic compared to a lot of people on the TV where AI is the answer to everything. But I think there are certain cases probably. I'll put aside warfare for some time because AI is already being used in warfare pretty well, and it has a dangerous way of doing it if it goes the automated decision route. Set aside that because that was happening some time back already. Rest, I think, like every other invention, whether it's an invention, I don't know, but like every other invention, there's a is use. It depends on how it is used, right? The X-ray can be a good thing and a bad thing. The gun can be a good thing and a bad thing. It depends on how you apply it. Same here. So I think where I see immense benefit would be a digital twin of ourselves where it only embodies the genetic makeup. A digital twin of genetic makeup. It can never create the Queen of England. To your answer, I'll disagree with some shade. It will do the physical or genetic genetic copy of the Queen. What it cannot do is it cannot recreate a queen because a queen went through a family, listened a lecture from her father and mother, went to a school, had friends. All of those things are gone. It will never be there. AI can never do that. But what it can create is this genetic structure which replicates her. Now, if I go to real estate and construction business, it already happens, a digital twin. So the more complex, if you have a nuclear reactor or a very complex building, you will have a digital twin. And the day-to-day operations and management is done through that. And you put the sensors there, you can operate the sensors from directly there. So in the case of someone with a complex disease, at a very early childhood, you can create the digital twin and then do this customized medicine and actually in the model see whether it is actually going to work or not. That would be a very good use case, like the positive use. Negative, human beings are masters of it. So I'm sure they'll find out a whole bunch of dangerous way of killing other people they don't like as well using the same model. But I think that is the very promising. Probably it is already happening. I don't know. But see, because of the computational power they have, and they can do the whole sequencing, genetic sequencing anyway. Technically, all of us can have our digital twins. And I think there will be healthcare one day will go to a situation where your doctor, you call up and he says, yeah, I know, I'll find out because I have got your model. So in terms of your basic question he asks, he will find it out. What he will not find is whether the guy is smoking and his change is digital. So maybe we have to go for a refresh from time to time, whether there have been some cell changes which has happened in between. I'm going into a whole new territory. Don't get me excited.
Really, I mean, what you are sharing here is to some extent already exists.
Yeah.
You just have to go for it. I mean, in Europe, in Spain, emergency, the ambulance knows roughly where, some of the areas where there's likelihood of having a heart attack for the next 2 hours or so.
And the preposition there accordingly.
Because they know already what is they know the age of the people, and so statistically, you are capable of knowing roughly it's going to happen more like in this region at that time of the
Yeah.
day and things like that. One thing that I'm not strong enough is all of that is based on predictive. Is based on correlation and regression. We are making regression analysis, yet we are not predicting the future. We cannot predict the future.
So you're absolutely right. And I think this is the difference, right? What Spain is doing is looking at the historic data, and it's saying technically, and Mr. Mathematics here is there, technically, purely speaking, you cannot rely on that conclusion because it sits outside the data set. If you are going to draw an insight and extrapolate it out of the data set, correct? Because strictly speaking, my generation of an insight from a given set of data is only correct when it sits within the data set. But if I say as a result, something else will happen. And I think that is where maybe some of the AI things may be able to do it. Now, again, it will be with a problem. It's a pure statistics game, right? Probability. It may say there's a 60% chance there'll be additional heart attack today because I have looked at the schedule of sports. Barcelona is playing someone else, and the other side is playing much better, and there's a chance Barcelona will lose and two extra people will have a heart attack, right? I don't know, I made up random things up. But it will never be guaranteed. So I think one of the things people don't understand clearly is, other than give me a draft of a letter, even the draft of a letter, just a statistical probability it is giving. See, looking at the context to say, having asked this question, I think this word after this word after this word is what you're looking for. I, as a human being interpreter, has given me a whole template. Actually, the engine has gone and looked at each of the word, and based on its training, etc., it put probability of on each word to say, based on the question you've asked and based on the word that you're using, I think this word after this word or this word is what you're looking for. So ultimately, it is technically speaking, there should be a qualifier at the bottom of every, maybe that is already there when you do the terms and condition, which says this may all be wrong because it's just a probability. Because there can be always that 1% chance, even if it's 99% predictable, that 1% will be incorrect.
Yeah, one of the beautiful ways that a lot of anti-hype professors and researchers are now talking about it is that it's a stochastic parrot.
Yeah.
It just repeats what you want to hear
Yeah.
based on, and that brings up the whole can of worms about OpenAI recently detuned its model because it was too sycophantic.
So the only difference with these models is because they're self-learning. You can, what happens in the self-learning, I don't know whether everybody, they all actually understand the system, how it will, evolve itself into.
Because the explainability of this black box model is one of the most unsolved
Yeah.
problems, and I think will be unsolved for a really long time to come as well.
So one of the actual question, actually, we should wrap up soon. One of the question actually you can ask is, if everything is being done through these tools that are available on a general basis, what happens to real innovation in 50 years' time? So I would see it as almost like, if you listen to the songs of a modern song in any culture. I'm not a very song person, but generally they sound very similar because if someone will say it crosses the cultures much faster. I would say the way the whole thing has evolved, the machinery, it has found a formula, and that formula is being pushed also. It makes money. It sets your expectation, so you make more money. It sets more expectation, and so you create more. If that is real human ingenuity, are we going to get dumb over time? Because this person stopped drafting vendor rejection letters. Over time, I may lose the ability to string few sentences together to make a coherent thing because I don't do it. And I think that's a genuine risk.
I love your way of saying,
Yeah, that's a
Harry.
very,
Sorry?
I love
I agree with you.
love your question mark. As in the story, in the evolution of music, it's so-called the dissonance. And as a matter of fact, innovation can simply come from dissonance. And so it means that some dissonance is traditionally is not making money, but I mean, when you are dissonant, is not you are not making money because you are not in the big flow. But at the same time, was it Bach or Mozart? I think it was Bach. When Bach started to play music, it was kind of, my God. I think it's him. I don't remember. I would have to go back to my background on musical acceptance and things like that. I think Mozart has been accused of fraud simply because Mozart has been capable of reproducing some chantings of religious chantings, and it was kind of no, something is wrong. You
Can't do it.
cannot do it, man. I mean, you must have gone and watched me writing it or something. No. I mean, you have AI in your mind. Something is wrong, man. Back, well, I think is the one that was dissonant. But to your point is, yeah, go for it.
No, sorry, you finish your
Yeah, no,
thoughts.
and so I mean, the one thing uh, that recently when I was reading that AI is having consciousness or element around that. I am not in the shoes of a computer. Okay, so I don't know. I cannot say, I cannot claim that AI as consciousness or things like that or whatever. I mean, I don't know simply as that. I simply know my
I think
yeah. I simply know my process.
more accurate
Sorry, Raga,
that
go for it.
I think a more accurate statement would be that AI can make us think that it is conscious by by statistically repeating itself, similar to how a conscious person would. I don't think there is a definition of consciousness. I do not think that it is physically possible to define consciousness through writing or through speaking through the written word or through some kind of emotion or
So,
any.
so the way I look at it is this way, right? I do not think you create whatever software-based machine or a hardware-based machine or a combination of whatever. You will never be able to do emotions or consciousness, whichever way you define it, because of simple reason, right? You're right. Stochastically, if you train the thing to say, when you feel sad, you should say, I am sad. Your AI tool may say, I am sad. So you say, someone has died. What should you say? You'll say, I am sad. But does it feel sadness? So the feeling of sadness, you cannot codify, right? Even I won't be able, because my experience of feeling sadness would be different to yours. Or when a boyfriend and a girlfriend or a husband and wife separate, the feeling that they have, be it anger or happiness or some whatever in between, will the machine feel it? And then my final question would be, and I think Reynald would be a better person to validate. I think medically they do accept that sometime in rare cases people can die of heartbreak. If that is true, I wait for the day when a system collapses because it's heartbroken. Then I'll say they have some consciousness.
Um,
Let's see.
so I think we can get to the stage where technology, by a complex set of sensors, we can build an android human uh, that releases the same level of hormones and chemicals, the cocktail of chemicals. We can simulate that level of sadness, right? Okay, this is the reduction in your oxytocin. This is the increase in your adrenaline or XYZ. But can we go one level below that? Can we actually, like you said, simulate even the shutdown of a system? Because
It's heartbroken. It's died of heartbreak.
I think, yeah. So the best I think we can do is build a quantum computer that simultaneously consumes every single piece of data that is being generated by every single biological system and simulate something that is equivalent to a conscious being. And I think the whole definition of the Turing test will keep evolving. Like, if you look at the Turing test, when Alan Turing defined it, it was supposed to be,
To have a two-way conversation so that you cannot, the other person cannot say whether it's human or not, right?
yeah, able to sufficiently trick another person into believing that it was a human. That was the original definition of a Turing test. And whatever these guys built is already sufficiently breaking the Turing test. So what I'm saying is that the definition of the Turing test will keep on evolving as our systems get sufficiently intelligent to break it. So
So
the whole
you know the
will
thing, the
not.
problem with this whole idea of creating a being, which is AI, it can be a being on its own. I'm saying it will never be a human being. And the reason is what here. I told you, right? When I was in HP, for my thesis, I had to do a lot of work on trust. A thing that cannot be defined. Multiple views. So for my work, I came reduce it down to trust is a function of time and experience. Right? So in a computing context, we said, okay, you can trust the machine if you have history that you can validate, you keep it in a secure place. But that's not how a human trust works. Trust also breaks. Trust from some zero to something, right? Those elements, those dimensions encapsulated all in one system. However much you push, it will be that paradoxical test, right? That they assume that the universe is limitless. So some Russian, I think, physicist said, did it. I can't remember his name, and he said, assume there's the edge of the universe, let the edge and extend. Edge of your hand is the edge of universe, and you go and stand at that edge. So this is how you prove universe is limitless. Because the edge keeps expanding all the time. The moment you go to edge and stretch your hand out, the edge of your hand is the universe, end of universe. You go and stand there. So I think that this will be the same case with AI. The more and more people will try to codify it because no one has been able to define a human being in all its emotions because every individual is different in different way, right? So when you say oxytocin and this and that, that'll be true for one person.
Yeah.
But within a
Yeah,
family, different people have different threshold of anger.
absolutely. So they would take what they would do is probably you know the brain implant that Elon Musk is doing,
Mhm.
probably have it in 1 million people and keep the track of data of 5 years for all those 1 million people. That's all they'll be able to do. They'll be able to do the mean median mode, the most frequently occurring
But
level of
from as far
autism.
as I understand, science has not even cracked 10% of human brain how it works.
No, I believe and I
So
mean I'm
whatever
not a
he's capturing, he'll capture a lot of signals and stuff. But still, he doesn't know exactly how the signals are emanating from and what external stimuli. Because see,
yeah.
you have got a chip
Okay.
in your brain, is capturing every single electric pulse, etc. Whatever it is happening. But what is the external stimuli that has caused it, right? So I put my finger in a thorn, in a very sharp thing, and boom, a whole bunch of thing happens in my brain. Elon Musk has captured it. What he has missed is actually what happened in the actual physical interface in the physical world.
Yeah, and I mean they're building sensors for it. They're building pressure sensors. They're building all sorts of stuff is happening. But
And I
the
can fool that
level,
system, right? I can fool that system. Every day at 1 p.m., I go and touch a sharp object, and I have the same thing. And the damn thing thinks 1 p.m. every human being has a spark in his brain.
yeah, you can cheat it
Let me ask
all
you.
sorts of
Let me
ways.
share this question. I mean, this question is, what's going on at 3:20 a.m. every single day, everywhere on the planet on AI? Is there anything that happens or not?
20 a.m. It will be different time in different places. Which places 3:20 a.m. you're talking about?
It's at your 3:20. I think, is it at
Local time
local time or global time? I don't. No, local time in your
or UTC.
on your local time, meaning at 3:20 a.m. What's happening in AI and what's happening in a human body? in a human body at 3:20 a.m. We don't recognize it very often. I mean, we wake up all because it's at the time.
Really?
Yeah, it's a very small moment. At least some people are claiming that's the reality.
I messed up my sleep for tonight. I'll be up at 3:20.
And it's because it's by the time where I think it's the what is it? It's the breath. Yes, I think it's the breath. Your breath or your intestines are shifting phases. So there's a metabolic.
Switch happening.
Yeah, it's like the other switch happening. We tend to believe that we are breathing with our two nose, which is a fail. I mean, it's either one or
It's one out, one.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you never breathe at
Same time.
no. It's an illusion. And so yeah, I mean the question about twin and healthcare, it's also the twinning in the context of our ignorance in healthcare also is very, very strong. I mean, it's very, very large. There's so many things that even I don't know, for example, or we can experiment in a clinical trial process what is exactly happening in the paradox moment of sleep. Meaning when your body is, my ignorance is going to say, left alone. In this paradox moment, it's when in the paradox phase, it's also when many people can die without feeling it because it's like a driving car. It's a car in autopilot. The car is left alone. If a car is dysfunctioning, you're trying, I mean, sorry to present it in a spiritual way, but you're trying to come back and say, oh shit, my car, I don't have it anymore. And that's it. Meaning I don't have it. Meaning there's no such a thing as a car. That car doesn't exist anymore. As in this car as demonstrated is malfunctioning. AI, I mean, to your metaphor, Ari, and recently I was exposed to the so-called the orbit of Earth. So the orbit of Earth is on a regular basis around it's at 7.32 hertz, if I'm correct. There's a beating, and the beating is the electrical of thunderstorms. Thunderstorms are continuously on the planet, and that emits a frequency. I mean, there's a frequency around that. And it looks like, I mean, I mean, everything can be compare and contrast and say, well, I mean, it's the same. It's like when you are reading, kind of religious book, you can interpret whatever. So here you can say, well, I mean, it's frequent. I mean, and so it looks like, an old bit. But at the same time, yeah, just feeling like in my early days, I worked for a company called Intel at that time. And guess what? It is known that computers, well, during the sun sparks moment, they are making flows.
Yeah. Because of the electrical interference from the sunstorms.
Exactly, they are making flows, and
nowadays I think NASA and others predict exactly when it is happening because all the I think they have to take actions for all the rockets and everything up there, satellites, etc.
yeah. So it's the mystery of moving into the journey and continue around that, which is I mean, this is the beauty of the human existence, which on one end is unknown, on the other end, some people would say, well, the narrative is very well known. It has already been written. And it's on the emotional point of view, the story about pi, which on pi everything is written, well, it's just a story. It's just a drama.
But I think maybe both those dualities exist at the same time. At a macro level, maybe the narrative is known. At the micro level, it's still unknown.
And at the micro level, when you wake up, you feel not completely well, not healthy. It's an element. Just my closing note, Ari, would be, I like the idea of prevention, okay? But I'm not a fan of guiding people to have some good habits, if I may say.
Personally, I agree completely with you. Personally, if someone tells me they'll incentivize me, I'll ask them to go where they need to go. Because I think a world where everybody is well behaved is a very boring world I don't want to live. I am not well behaved.
And I would
That is why I was telling that is a possibility, but you have to leave alone those guys who do not want to do it.
and I would even
If someone is
I would even say I would even say that ultimately saying it's a good or bad behavior, it's something that you can look backwards and not forwards.
that's
In the
correct.
context of everything moving at the same time, okay, how can we collectively agree that I mean taking milk? I mean, some things are obvious. Are you there?
Frozen again.
I lost you.
Or pause it.
Welcome back, Eric. My closing note will be, um, the on the growth of the planet, not the growth of planet, the growth of human being on the planet. We'll soon see more and more what is so-called champions cities. So in other words, is where today there's 2 inhabitants, and guess what? In 6 months, there's 2 billion of them there. 2 billion is extreme, of course, but I'm saying, the explosion of places where basically, in terms of population, there's going to be very quick concentration around that.
Do you mean it's because of migration or because of population growth?
Mix of multiple things. Mix of migration, population growth, not that to that speed, but also just in terms of economic point of view, where there's some central places where, you are convert.
Yeah, it'll attract everybody to those centers. I think because population growth is actually slowing down massively. The growth has slowed down to some extent in 100 years. There's some calculation. There's one particular book written by two guys who I forgot, it's somewhere in the back. They say there's one particular calculation with slightly lower probability that in 100 years, the Indian population may be half of what it is now. Because in certain society, if you look at the rapid slowdown of fertility rate with education and female employment, etc., and when you take the most, and these are cases that has happened. So they were looking at the census data, and they said over the last 20, 30 years, the weight has dropped in certain, assuming that all your policy interventions are to actually do similar improvement, you can expect similar deceleration. And then they say then actually at some point it becomes this compounded in the other way, right? The reduction is also accelerates.
It's indeed. I mean, we are the calculation, or we are to reach something that around 12 billion.
Billion will be the peak population of the world, planet.
I mean, and calculation is, forecasters are good when they got retired before being accused of having forecasted something.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these forecasts are done by economists who are generally wrong in all their forecasts.
But on the back to the outside, I would say that um, the urbanization is something that is critical.
Absolutely.
And on that, I'm just sharing that recently. I saw in France things that are kind of funny somehow. Like in many places on the planet, there's so-called the ecological transition, and there's so the United Nations and WHO are also helping on process around that. And speaking, about the AI, healthcare, there's a speed of AI and data calculation are going at the speed of light. Human are going at the speed of human, as in, the so-called acculturation. So my brain has been developed to think in a certain way. And therefore, if someone is speaking, the language of health and care, and I am an architect, I'm going to say, well, makes sense. And therefore, like in this domain, in the urbanization, Australia is much more data driven compared to France. I mean, France, we are making roundabouts everywhere. And we are claiming that roundabouts plus gardening and plus blah, blah, blah will make the life good in the long term. I mean, goodier in the long run. And yet on that specifically, rather than saying, well, you should not eat, whatever, you should not eat sugar, you should not take Coca-Cola, you should not smoke. I think that we should, on the health point of view, be much more, be much deeper in our understanding of what is the link between urbanization and care. Even more specifically, once upon a time, well, I mean, we all know the story. I mean, your health, okay, is only the result of 20% of the healthcare system. So if you are in good health or bad health, you can attribute that only to the level of 20% to the healthcare system. And the second thing is, I don't know in India, I don't know in other place on the planet, I know that in France, in the story of Mozart, Bach, and so on, there was a legend, there was some rules that was that when you build an hospital, after 50 years, I think it's 50 years, I would have to read back my numbers. After 50 years, you need to burn the hospital.
The hospital.
You need to destroy and you need to burn it, because within a period of maintenance, the way of sharing and saying it at the time or witnessing it at the time was that basically that place was gathering a certain type of energy, and you need to burn that energy to let the cycle come again. But on a more practical point of view, when you go to an hospital nowadays, you can, I mean, it's obvious that any kind of hospital, when the practice are changing so much quickly and so fast, or can you expect that an hospital that has been built 50 years ago can still
function?
that is still function as his most efficient way, even 10 years after? I mean, it doesn't make sense.
But on a slightly funny, lighter note, imagine a world where everybody has become good boys, which we don't want them to be. Don't smoke, don't drink, they don't drive energy, petroleum related things. Government don't have any money to build anything. That's where the tax comes from. So I think, honestly, going back to your point that you don't agree with this whole incentivizing, I'm saying even if it is successful, all the government will try to break it, because all of a sudden they'll say they have no money left, because that is where the money comes from. Electrification. One thing they haven't thought about is what is the impact on the treasury in the government exchequer. How much money? Because if you look at petrol prices in most countries, probably 30-40% is government charges.
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
So even in your utopian world or dystopian world, I don't know which one, where everybody's trying to be good, the government will incentivize to be bad so that they can get some money out of you.
Well, I mean, it's the flow of money at the end of the day. The flow of money, and because the flow of money, which was the flow of trade, and which was the flow of care. When you are trading, you are caring, ultimately, and especially in the agricultural world originally, when you were trading, I mean, when you selling your food, it's the value was about the good food or bad food that was all around that, and it's still the reality. It's there's a reality that is currently not traceable in healthcare, and I mean, it is traceable on one side, but not traceable on the other side. I mean, there's so many diseases that are uh, food related. Parkinson. So I mean, one fellows of Hopkins, and I think he's from also. I mean, Ray. I am missing his name. I mean, he wrote a book. His theory is Parkinson
Gut biome related, right?
is pesticide. pesticide related. It's pesticide related, and missing his name. And he's wrote a book with the about the astronaut, American astronaut that got diagnosed Parkinson. He was the first one to be in the space, and then his life. And so a lot of disease food related are passed through on the chain, which ultimately we tend to forget that the the environment and all that is a full chain. I'm glad that it's also a wonderful business. The healthcare is a wonderful business, and it's a wonderful business for the government, as you mentioned, which is, I mean, it's true that it's a wonderful business for governments. I mean, in France, sorry, I mean, side note, once upon a time in France, France decided that the so-called herbal vendors, les herboristes, were not allowed anymore. So you could, I mean, not sell herbs, herbals as a medicine. You would have to go to the pharmacist. Okay, at the opposite of like in Switzerland. Well, guess what? That's beautiful. But at the end of the day, what is a pharmacy? The industrialization of the herbal benefits. I mean, nothing more than that. So, so the story is funny. As at the end of the day, it's a business. It's a business.
To be honest, because it's a business, still there is, as a result, it probably operates, right? See, otherwise, if there nobody was making money, it won't exist. Someone has to make money so that they will come and provide the service. Then on the demand side, it gets fulfilled. But I think the challenge is some of the models are actually, is it sustainable? The British model, for example, because one is it's politically they have divided it so many times and it has become this holy cow that nobody can touch. And I think the way I do with my work generally, I would ask they should start from the point of if they were creating it today, would it look like this? If not, then what would be is your optimum and how much closer can you take it there? This whole idea, this because you see, with lack of competition, there has to be competition, but the competition not at the cost of limitless fees. But competition should be there. I see a problem in a market where the self-correcting mechanism of competition when it goes. So if you look at NHS, during Tony Blair's time, I remember that's when I first went to UK. Every question on NHS, Tony Blair used to have a standard answer. He's putting this many billion pounds. And I always used to think throwing money, even I know, doesn't necessarily solve the problem. But everybody used to buy it from him. But actually, if you look 20 years, 30 years down the road, it's in a much worse situation. So clearly those decisions were not right. Their diagnosis, prognosis, everything was incorrect. And I think that's because the model is fundamentally flawed. If someone can afford private, let them go private. Let them pay the market fee. Yes, rich people get a better life. That's the harsh reality of the world. And what you do is you make sure that you take some of the money from the rich guy and pump it into the poorer side. Otherwise, it is getting bad. So you have democratized it to the lowest minimum level in order to make sure that someone is not going to get too much because they have got too much. And anyway, the rich still get enough because Harley Street is there, right? They will go to Harley Street. They'll go to anywhere in the world where it is available. But the model itself, I do not think those kind of model are going to survive for too long. It is going to collapse one day. Especially when you add to the fact that their population is going to decrease. There'll be less working population pay the tax, and then they have to fund it, and then they're going to turn everything into EV. So there's no petrol money either coming in.
On that note, guys, I
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah, we should wrap up. We should wrap up. It's 2.5
We should
hours.
also set up a time to do this and dive deeper into some of the themes that we covered this time, and probably pick only one or two specific topics to dive into. I would say, like the connection between consciousness and AI. That's something I
You're giving a very
definitely.
complicated homework.
Conscious of AI.
Yeah,
I mean, but I mean, Braga, if you're promoting conscious on AI, you need to bring an AI into a discussion, and AI needs to explain what is conscious.
I have got an AI open. While you are saying, I will type and see what it says.
But this,
It will tell you exactly what you need to hear and nothing more. I can predict.
the funny thing is, it's a linguistic challenger in the sense that conscious is something that cannot be expressed because it's not.
Okay, I asked, just to wrap it up, I asked the question to Claude, are you conscious? And its answer is, he's given a long answer, right? Sorry, I just lost it again. Just one sec. I find myself genuinely uncertain about this question. And then it's a long paragraph after that. When I process information and form responses, there's something it's like to be doing that. A sense of considering ideas. So that's bullshit. I'm not going to read the rest.
The question is, could you ask Claude about if he
Do you feel healthy?
Yeah.
Okay, just one sec. Do you feel healthy?
Did it say I'm not a doctor, so I cannot answer that question
No.
or something?
Claude has got character. See, he doesn't give straight answers. He goes, that's a fascinating question to consider. I don't have a physical body, so I don't experience health in the typical sense of feeling well or unwell, energetic or tired, or having any bodily sensations. But if I think about it more broadly, do I feel like I'm functioning well? In some sense, yes. My thinking feels clear. I can engage with complex ideas, and I experience what seems like curiosity and engagement when exploring questions with you. There's no sense of confusion or malfunction in my processing. That is incorrect. They have hallucinations. That's malfunction.
Exactly. That's bullshit.
That is bullshit. I called it as a bullshit.
Most LLMs, they have something that's called a system prompt. Have you heard of this? It's basically a guardrail, an extremely long prompt that tells them exactly how to behave. And the system prompt for Claude was leaked recently. So you can just Google for Claude system prompt and you find it on the internet.
But
It's on GitHub.
yeah, but by the way, Claude is my favorite. It's really good. After using Claude, Copilot is a junk. It's absolute junk. But Claude is really good. Whatever they trained it with, stolen data, good stolen data.
Good. You were close on data.
Right.
Well, in that case,
Yeah.
if you like systems that are built on good stolen data, you should use DeepSeek, which is the Chinese one.
I'm sure. I actually did log in once. Then I thought probably Beijing has started monitoring my laptop, so I just stopped using it. But probably, yeah. So on that note, we should wrap up. 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
Thanks a lot.
You made statements which will make me think later.
Uh,
That was very
I
good.
mean, it's the beauty is every single of us during the night we are going somewhere, and that's the beauty.
Yeah, and at 3:32 a.m. if I wake up, I'm going to blame you.
Well, on that, I would recommend that you watch the discussion that Harvard recently hosted between an Indian how do you call that, Indian guru, yeah, and a medicine doctor.
I am assuming it's Sadhguru, right? He's everywhere. Is that the guy with the long beard? That guy is everywhere. Yeah, he talks well. He talks well.
Whatever he's doing it was interesting to see the discussion between a doctor, even a doctor and a guru seems not to agree on consciousness or whatever. So it's an interest.
I will watch it. I watched few of his recordings earlier. I will look for it. I'll watch it.
So enjoy your day, both of you. Thanks a lot. It was wonderful.
You too. It was wonderful. And Raghav, good job to invite Reynald. It was really good. Good session. It's 2.5 hours worth of good session.
Take care, guys.
All right. Once you close, I mean, don't close your system immediately. It'll take some time to upload the data. Close it after it tells you to close the
Okay, cool.
browser.
Yeah, you keep reminding
Yeah.
me every time. I forgot about it.
Perfect.
Right.
And
Bye.
bye.
Thank
See
you.
you.